And here we go. I got to tell you, it was a great start to the week on Monday. Yesterday, we had the markets were ripping to the upside. We had some great earnings. A lot of people were really excited about things, and then they weren't. But we'll get to that in 1 second. But when you take a look at the Dow was up well over 300 points early on. Then we had this midday sort of a slide, and I think a lot of that had to do with what Apple was talking about. But let's get into that in just a second. We had that slide. We got back underneath 31,000 for the Dow. But we did get a little bit of a lift late, and we finished the day down about 215 points on the Dow. But we were up well over 300 points early on. So there was a big shift when you really look at what was going on yesterday. NASDAQ, you had almost the same story. It was up like a mirror, really, up about 160 points. We get that pullback about midday. We get a little bit of a move to the upside. And as a matter of fact, late, there was a nice little jump for both the Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P. And so we finished down about 90 points on the NASDAQ yesterday. Apple was the storyline, in my opinion. And it was just talking about the hiring and the spending and all of that. And you take a look at the price of Apple. Apple actually rocketed up well up to over 150. I think it hit actually 151 yesterday. And then in the afternoon, with some of that news, it pulled all the way back to 147. It was a big reversal yesterday. Today, not so much. The financials definitely were a powerhouse yesterday. They really were when you take a look. Goldman Sachs, it just stood out. They were rocking and rolling, and it was a very impressive number that they were able to put up. We had the financials definitely with a nice big push to the upside yesterday. Volatility back underneath that 25 level. You got nat gas up there near 750. So that was something that stood out. We had crude back over 100, 101, 102. Certainly that stood out as well. Volatility, as I mentioned, around 25, but the volume kind of up there near that 40 million mark again. We're not over it. We were a little bit short, call it 39 million yesterday, but it was still a pretty decent day. So we've had a little bit more of that volume, and I think some of it is, okay, it is summertime, but people were pretty excited about earnings and this particular part of the earnings season. And maybe that's the reason that we're seeing a lot more participation in the derivatives markets. We certainly are seeing some of that. 2-year, 10-year, kind of flopping around there, still around where they were. You look at the 10-year, just below 3. You look at the 2-year, just above 3.1, call it 3.17 yesterday. And then let's not forget to talk about that volatility index of the NASDAQ, which is still holding above 30 and right around that 31 level. So let's just keep an eye on that as well. We've talked about that in the past and some of the moves we've seen in the volatility of the NASDAQ. Certainly a powerhouse area. So that's something I think we just need to continue to watch very closely. Energy was up well over 3% early on, finished the day up about 2% or so. But it was everything else. Materials started off pretty strong. They waned late. You look over at consumer discretionary, strong early, up more than 1.5%. That waned down as well. Financials actually did pull all the way back and actually finished a little bit into negative territory after being up strong. But there was some powerful moves yesterday, no doubt about that. We were talking about that yesterday on Pete's covered calls as well, talking about Goldman Sachs, one of the names that's in that portfolio. The staples, they were down a little bit yesterday, and healthcare down yesterday. Healthcare actually down about 2% yesterday. You look across and you see different parts of the market, though, that were shifting around. That's why we want to highlight what was working, what wasn't. Yesterday, it was Freeport, McMoran, and Nucor having a pretty good start to the day. You also had cruise lines, and they've been putting back-to-back days together of late. Not as much that back and forth and back and forth. Just seems like a little bit more and another jump to the upside. You look at something like CCL, you look at RCL, you look at Norwegian Cruise Line, those names, definitely the leadership area. And then I look over at an Airbnb as well. Goldman Sachs still did finish in positive territory as well as Lucid. So that was something. But there was areas of the marketplace that were not working very well as well, obviously. I look at Regeneron. I look at something like a Thermo Fisher, definitely getting pushed. I look at some of the other areas, Gilead, a little bit of a push to the downside. You got Datadog, you got Google, Merck. You can see a lot of the healthcare names just kind of pulling back a little bit yesterday. And of course, that big move that we talked about already in Apple. So we continue earnings. IBM comes up, down about 5 or 6% today, definitely getting hammered. You'd expect to see the market and look and say, well, Dow's probably down. IBM's down about 4, 5, 6%. I'd look at the Dow and say, well, it's probably down about 100, 120 points. A lot of that just a contributor from IBM. Not the case at all. 245 points to the upside in the pre-market, even with IBM pulling to the downside. And even once we got into that opening bell, it didn't change. As a matter of fact, it did change in a positive way. We were up 300, up 350, up 400, up 450. The Dow has been absolutely ripping despite the fact of that IBM number. Everything else seems to be fine. It really is just that one area, and it's gotten a pretty big hit to the downside. Crude oil started out the day a little over 100, then it was 101 last I looked, actually back over 102. Nat gas still kind of holding on. Did a little bit of a pullback from yesterday, but keep an eye on that. That's been a mover to the upside now for a little while. Volatility kind of just planted right there underneath that 25 level. You know what's really been kind of having a pretty decent day and not talked about much? We brought it up here on the take, but Bitcoin. Bitcoin was under 20,000. It got back over 20,000, then 21,000, and it's holding still pretty nicely over 22,000. So keep an eye on that one as well. The 2-year, the 10-year, we always talk about it. The 10-year is getting daggone close to that 3 level, something I think you need to keep an eye on. And you look at the 2-year, almost completely unchanged. Sectors early on. Financial started off strong. They continued to get stronger. Industrial started off strong, up 2%. Material started off strong, up 2.25%. You get the idea. You can understand why we're seeing the markets broadly having a pretty good push to the upside, with the NASDAQ starting off the day, I'll call it 120. Last I looked, it was up about 175. So it wasn't just IBM and the concerns that people have about the dollar and also the free cash flow that they adjusted back down a little bit. Those certainly were factors. Then I look over at J&J. They had dollar headwinds as well. They talked about that, but it was still a strong report. And you still look at something where the forecast was maybe not what everybody wanted, but J&J is hanging in there pretty well. Not having an unbelievable day, not a lot of movement, but all things considered, having a pretty good day. Cruise ships, as I mentioned, continue to be pretty strong. I'm looking over at Carnival and Royal having another great day. CBOE, options world right there. You're talking about the king of my old stomping grounds, having a very nice day once again. Penn, Caesars, another good day. I look over at Marriott, also contributing pretty nicely today. Semiconductors, the month of June just seemed to struggle, but the second we got to July, we've been watching that area just start going up, 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 up. The subsector having another pretty good day. Take a look at Marvell, take a look at NXPI. Pretty solid, pretty decent day so far, along with Boeing, Goldman Sachs, American Express. Before I get over to the negatives, I'll give you a couple of negatives. It's not just IBM. You got Lockheed Martin a little bit there. You got Okta, you got Netflix, you got Datadog. What I didn't mention to you, though, is how do you navigate markets like this? Today at the close, it's going to be a lot of fun because Ryan Mastro does an absolutely amazing job breaking down a lot of the trades that we see in the unusual option activity. He's going to be joining me. The two of us are going to be hammering it out. Matter of fact, we might even get the entire Rebel pit along with us. Who knows? But certainly Ryan's going to be there, and we're going to be talking about how to navigate these markets and what it is that we're looking at on the unusual options and how we decide to make some of the decisions going forward on which ones are selected, which ones are not, what's really happening in that world, and maybe the backdrop of how do you navigate that. That's going to be at the market close today. Sign up for that one now, because even if you are not able to go, you can always get that sent to you later on. So just keep an eye on that. Now to the unusual. Got two. We always have two. Want to just give you some. I know you can't get it at midday anymore, so you've got me doing the take in the mornings, and I'll give you two. John, of course, the 3 and 3 Eastern time. He's going to give you a few more unusual. So here's what I got for you today. Halliburton. They did have earnings already. They did have a nice move to the upside, and that kind of faded a little bit. But I will tell you this. We did have some call buying in there also today. Interesting. Stock was trading just underneath 30. It was trading 29.70. Had a buyer of 3,600 of Friday's expiring 31 calls. So would it take a pretty big move? Actually, it would. It would take a pretty big move to get up there. Only 25 cents up to about 37 cents is what they're paying for these options. They had great margin expansion. They had a lot of different things within that earnings report. And somebody seems to think that maybe over the next couple of days with the rest of the energy stocks, maybe we're seeing, I mentioned oil, 100, 101, 102. Maybe they're sort of projecting forward a little bit more. By the way, Warren Buffett just continues to buy that Occidental. It's a very, very interesting thing to watch almost daily, it feels like. we're hearing about even more activity from him and actually making that move, what he's been doing in Occidental, just adding stock and shares all the time, it seems. Secondly, I'm going to give you Nikola. Now that's trading about 560, so it's underneath 6. It's interesting because we've got a guy who's rolling. They were in July, the July 6th calls. They're getting out of those, 19,000 of those, but wanting to be there and wanting to have a little bit more time for the results. They went to August 5th. The 6 calls, once again, 39,000. I think I said 19,000. 39,700 calls getting traded, 44 cents up to about 49 cents there. Pretty large trade, looking for a little bit more of a boost there. We know what's been going on with Tesla. We obviously know what's going on in the EV space. But Nikola is one of those names. It's gotten punished a little bit, and maybe it's got a little bit of upside. Certainly somebody out there is rolling. They're giving up for the shorter term here in July, but they're actually going out and extending out to that first week in August. Something to keep an eye on. Folks, I'm Pete Najarian. Hope you'll understand what we're talking about here. Derivatives markets are on fire. Absolutely loving what's going on there. Check in with Ryan Master and myself after the close today. And if you don't understand the derivatives markets, educate yourself. Try to find stuff on the internet. Whatever you need to do, come to Market Rebellion, read books, whatever it is, you're going to want to be in the derivatives markets. It gives you leverage. It also gives you different ways of hedging and all kinds of ways to be a little bit safer, not just always risky. Everybody considers it always risky. That's not always the case. It can be, but there certainly are ways that you can actually manipulate within the markets and actually do things that are very, very conservative as well. Folks, have a great day of trading.